Okay, we're back again reading the record of the orally transmitted teachings translated by Burton Watson. We left off yesterday on page 174. We're in the Bodhisattva Medicine King chapter. And as usual, I'm going to go back one point just to make sure that it's perfectly clear. So I'm going to go back to 173 at the very bottom where it says point 3, regarding the passage, such is this Lotus Sutra, it can cause living beings to cast off all distress, all sickness and pain. It can unloose all the bonds of birth and death. And I want to make sure we understand exactly what that's talking about, because to a degree there's a concept in Buddhism, and the Daishonin is incorporated in his understanding and teaching, as we call it in Japanese, is Tenju Kyoju. It's lessening one's karmic retribution. Okay, so that's an aspect of what this phrase is talking about when it says, such is this Lotus Sutra, it can cause living beings to cast off all distress, all sickness and pain. It can unloose the bonds of birth and death. But unloosing the bonds of birth and death really pertain to your reward body activated and perceiving the truth that your karma is what's being reflected in your daily life every day. And right now I know there's a lot of uncertainty and confusion going on in the world. And I thought that it would be a good thing to emphasize this point so that we understand exactly how we can attack those senses of discomfort and bring ease and easing our distress and cast off our distress and all sickness and pain. So let me go again. It goes, point 3, regarding the passage, such as this Lotus Sutra, it can cause living beings to cast off all distress, all sickness and pain. It can unloose the bonds of birth and death. Now, the bonds of birth and death are the delusion or lack of understanding of the fact that your life is eternal and that you have had other lifetimes that preceded this one. And that's what's reflected in the karma that you have to deal with. That's why there's all kinds of different degrees of what people that are practicing actually experience. It's based on the fortune or misfortune, depending upon how you look at it, of what they have to deal with in a single lifetime. But the reality is that anything that's a misfortune can be turned into great good fortune if it motivates you to chant more, if it motivates you to think and comprehend more. So not everything that brings discomfort or duress is necessarily a detriment or a bad thing. It's dependent upon how you perceive it and how you work through it and how you mitigate it. And that all comes from the wisdom of your own mind. You can go get advice from a lot of people. It's really not going to pertain to you individually because nobody knows what's really in your mind. You're the only one that controls what's really in your mind. And the teaching gives you a methodology to diminish it. That's why Tenju Kyoju, lessening one's karmic retribution, and there's a whole gosho on it. That's why that concept exists, is to help you understand that not everybody's going to live a fairy tale land life in terms of like no disruption, no nothing. I know personally myself, had I not gone through something that was like a great loss in terms of, material a material aspect of my life, it ultimately is responsible for the life that I have now as thus come one. And without that actual lesson and circumstance arising where I got ripped off by a bunch of people that I really trusted and that I really had a lot of faith in, and it was easy to be very angry with them rather than perceiving it as something that was really a reflection of me. And my life had already qualified to me, Tom, you're not the best behaving guy around. Okay, so I had to go through a lot of self-reflection as a result of what was a painful and uncertain time in my life. And right now, it's not like I've got it all made, but I do have it knocked as far as understanding the truth of my life. I am thus come one of original enlightenment, eternally endowed with the three bodies. I've had many lifetimes in the past. This lifetime is reflecting past lifetimes. It's not reflecting this lifetime. I am gaining the great good fortune of the sixth stage of practice, which cannot be taken away from me. Attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime guarantees me that I will perceive the truth in the future. And there are two phrases we'll get to in the course of today's reading. But it's the wisdom of the truth that functions in accordance with changing circumstances. That wisdom is your growth and your understanding of the reality of life. It's the reality of karmic retribution or karmic reward. It's the understanding that no matter what this moment holds, future moments can hold something else if I take the appropriate action and make the appropriate causes for that to be the case. Rather than a lot of self-doubt, it just spurs me on to chant more Daimoku. So you can collapse under the weight of the immediate circumstance and miss the whole opportunity to change everything that changes forever. Because if you can get to the sixth stage of practice, you never have to worry about ever being perplexed about things in the future again. You're going to encounter them because you've created karma over many, many lifetimes. This is what the Daishonin constantly qualified for his own life. You know, God, there's so many goshos where he alludes to, God, I must have been the worst person in the world to have to put up with all the shit that I'm putting up with. You know, I must have really just been, disrespectful to my mother and my father, and abandoned the three treasures. He puts all kinds of like karmic group that obviously never really is an effect that. But again, Gan can go. We deliberately create the appropriate karma. If we're Buddhists, we deliberately create the appropriate karma so we can teach the lessons of life through our own behavior and our own experiences, and we can manifest pity and compassion for people that have not had the opportunity to understand what we understand. That's why we try to share it with them constantly. So I went back to point 3 because it's got a meaning that I'm sure I didn't mention yesterday a couple days ago when I read it. It says, the record at the bottom of page 173, the record of the orally transmitted teaching says, the very heart of the Lotus Sutra is the teaching that earthly desires are enlightenment and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. That, earthly desires are what propel us in the initial stages of the 6 stages of practice. We want benefits. We get benefits. We see actual proof. We see power. Okay, and we have a tendency then to adopt the truth and reality that chanting, I can always just chant and it changes. Okay, but sometimes we've got to grow with that process if we're not going to just get stuck in stage 4, which is like, resembling a Buddha, because you're doing all the things, but are you really advancing to perceiving the fact that you're a Buddha? That's the golden key, and that's why you have to be. That has to be mitigated through your efforts and your seeking spirit. So it says, again, the very heart of the Lotus Sutra is the teaching that earthly desires are enlightenment and that the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana, because it's that yin and yang element of life that brings you forward to be able to perceive all things exactly as they are, which is the enlightenment of Buddhahood in the 6th stage. That's your Dharma body becoming manifest. Okay, the reward body and your actions, your manifest body, are what helped carry you there, doing activities, chanting Daimoku to the Gohonzon. But you got to be pondering and looking for the wisdom to perceive the truth at all times if you're actually going to sustain and advance. And you've got to be committed to advance. You can't be happy enough to just hit a happy spot in life and that's where you want to just stick and stay. But it doesn't include Buddhahood. You're not going to be able to help anybody else out. And as a result, that lack of pity and compassion, that lack of willingness to not begrudge your life is going to be reflected in the karma that you reveal. Okay? So, the very heart of the Lotus Sutra is the teaching that earthly desires are enlightenment and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. That's what that's all about. All of the wisdom that you'll ever need to perceive in your life is accomplished through both of those realities that are in Siddham characters on each side of the Gohonzon. Here, the two expressions cast off and unloosed would seem to go directly counter to the teaching. Okay? However, it says, however, I'll say that for myself, and however, we should take the words cast off in the sense of becoming enlightened concerning. So becoming enlightened concerning isn't necessarily the sixth stage, it's the progression that we make from the second stage until we get to the sixth stage of practice. So our reward body is constantly refining our capacity to perceive the truth. And that only happens because we're constantly exercising the reward body. We're constantly doing study. We're chanting in front of the Gohonzon. We're seeking wisdom, not just seeking benefits, okay? Because the idea is Kosen Rufu, guys. It's not just about us having a fairy tale life with no problems or troubles. It's about achieving widespread propagation, and it will take the wisdom of the Buddha to do that. And it's not just the wisdom of a Buddha, it's the wisdom of all Buddhas, because all living beings possess the eternally endowed three bodies, right? So it says, however, we should take the words cast off in the sense of becoming enlightened concerning. If we look with the eyes of wisdom as they are opened by the lifespan chapter of the essential teaching, the thing that clarifies that we've had, eternal life and that we are eternally endowed with the three bodies and that we're actually already Buddhas exactly as we are. That's where the construct of the sixth stage of practice comes from, Buddhahood in your present form, all right? So if we look with the eyes of the wisdom as they are opened up by the lifespan chapter of the essential teaching, the lifespan chapter of the essential teaching is actually the lifespan chapter of the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It's Nichiren's Buddhism. It's not the last 14 chapters of the Lotus Sutra that we're now referring to in these closing chapters, since supernatural powers is already, we're done with it. We're out of there, okay? So why does he continue talking if we've all left, if the bodhisattvas of the earth have left? Because there's still a lot of wisdom to glean here for when we're in the Saha world as the bodhisattvas of the earth, showing others how to alter their pain and discomfort and turn it into manifest joy and wisdom, all right? So we will become enlightened to the truth that sickness, pain, and distress are and have always been an innate part of life. So as much as we may want to wish it away or subject ourselves to a little bit of degradation that we could have made causes that it could be this bad, I always go back to, is my life right now worse than anything? That whatever I'm suffering, no matter how deep and stressful and painful and scary it is, I always go back to, yeah, but what about Nichiren? I can never compare my life to his. And so, if he had the compassion to bear through that, I must have that compassion and strength myself, because I've taken a vow to do that. Okay, so we will become enlightened to the truth that sickness, pain, in other words, we'll become enlightened to it. Exactly what I'm talking about. We'll become aware of the truth of the fact that sickness, pain, and distress are and have always been an innate part of life. And no matter what lifetime, if you don't have it in your life, how can you attain Buddhahood? Shakyamuni certainly didn't live that kind of a life. There are no Buddhas. I mean, he talks about Arishima, people being branded in the face, people being covered with carts of dung. I mean, all kinds of nastiness that you would think, man, if they're doing the right kind of thing, why would they have to endure that? They endure that for the sake of others seeing the fact that they are human beings. They're not supernatural entities. They're just like them. They have shit that they go through, but they have shit that they always defeat, because that's the whole point. Whatever you're dealing with, you win. You win. If you don't give up, you win. That's why you should not be discouraged or lose faith for even a moment. That causes a slander that you really don't want to inject into the karmic flow of what you're going through right now. This is when you're not getting benefit, is when you should have the most confidence that you will. Okay? So, we will become enlightened to the truth of that sickness, pain, and distress are and always have been an innate part of life. Such is the wisdom of the Buddha of limitless joy. So now I keep saying we're all Buddhas of limitless joy as Buddhas of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is us come once. And what this Buddha of limitless joy really pertains to is the fact that we do a gan kin o go. We make the appropriate cause for the karma that will be reflected in a lifetime that will allow us to teach others through our example of going through difficult circumstances. You know, if we don't have those, we don't grow and we don't show. And those are the two big things, because we're trying to cause them to enter, right? So we got to have that part in sync with the people that don't have the fortune that we have to have encountered the Gohonzon and the Daishonen's teaching. He says, the phrase unloose all bonds of birth and death means to unlock us from the error of supposing that what we are now encountering, birth and death for the first time, because that's all we can think of is when we were born, and as we progress towards old age and sickness and death, that this hasn't happened. We're not. This isn't our first rodeo. We've done this before, so we are. Pardon me. The phrase unloose all the bonds of birth and death means to unlock us from the error of supposing that we are now encountering birth and death for the first time, and to help us realize that birth and death have always been an innate part of life, and therefore we've had the 8 sufferings that I'll get to in a minute, because they're going to be mentioned later and hopefully if I get to that point, talking as much as I am. Thus we are released from the bonds of supposing that we will attain enlightenment for the first time, as Shakyamuni did in his lifetime in India. We don't have to worry about it because we know we've attained Buddhahood before. We know it's an innate part of our body. We're eternally endowed with the 3 bodies. Our original state is Buddhahood. Okay, so we don't have to worry about will we be able to attain Buddhahood. We already confidently know we're going to, or that we are right now, depending upon what stage of practice you're in and the amount that you buy into and understand deeply what the Daishonin is saying over and over and over again here. He says, okay, so these 2 expressions, cast off and unloose, are in fact expressions of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. This is the process of attaining Buddhahood in your present form, expressing and understanding exactly what I just did. All right? Okay, so going on to point 4, as I was promised, we're on page 174. Point 4 of Bodhisattva Medicine King. Regarding the passage, excellent, excellent, good man, in the midst of the law of Shakyamuni Buddha, you have been able to accept, uphold, read, recite, and ponder this sutra and preach it to others. The five things you're supposed to do if you're a bodhisattva. The good fortune you gain thereby is immeasurable and boundless. It cannot be burned by fire or washed away by water. Okay, so that's from the Lotus Sutra, qualifying that the merit or reward for dealing with this shit, okay, and taking on the aspect of responsibility that lets you at a minimum, reference it in your life experience as lessening your karmic retribution, that merit cannot be washed away. It cannot be extinguished. Fire can't burn it, water can't wash it away. It says the record of the orally transmitted teaching says the word fire here refers to the flames of the Avicii hell. We will never be in the Avicii hell as bodhisattvas of the earth, other than expressing it as a life condition that's momentary around us in a circumstance where we're surrounded by other peoples in hell, and the reason we're there is to save them. And we understand that, and we go with the flow, and we don't have it affect our faith. Here it refers to the flames of the Avicii hell, and the word water refers to the ice of the hell of the crimson lotus, which is real badass if you look it up. All right. Now Nichiren and his followers who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo are persons who, as the text says, cannot be burned by fire or washed away by water. But it's also qualified Nichiren and his followers who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with faith and seek the same mind as him, that have the same enlightened aspect of that they're progressing in as him. That's the only way you'll get through it, or else you'll have doubts and trepidations that will preclude you from possibly manifesting all the way through to victory. And I would hate to have that happen, and that's why I reread point 3 and I'm now on point 4, continuing on point 5 at the bottom of page 174. Regarding the passage, point 5, regarding the passage, now you have been able to destroy all devils and thieves, to annihilate the army of birth and death, and all others who bore you enmity or malice have likewise been wiped out. So it almost makes it sound like attaining Buddhahood puts you in a state of perfection and la la land, and again, there are no more difficulties or trials or tribulations. That's not the point. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says at the point of top of 175, it's not a past tense issue. It's not like you get there and then you're free. Why? Because we're Buddhas of limitless joy. We constantly come back for the sake of expressing difficulties and things that we don't karmically really have retribution for, but we create the causes to get that karmic retribution so that we can teach other people that are stuck in the stages of hell, hunger, animality, anger, and lack realization. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the words who bore you enmity or malice refer to slanders of the law, such as the people that oppose us, Nim, Butsu, Zen, and True Word followers, from being able to propagate the correct teaching in the latter day. Have been wiped out refers to the principle that the Lotus Sutra is the teaching of Shakabuku. So really, in fact, what he's talking about have been wiped out is the fact that we're constantly able to replant the seeds. We plant seeds constantly to help people get on the path of Buddhahood. And that's really the ultimate expression of our mercy and compassion. It isn't giving them a loan or even a handout. It's, again, expressing the law to them in a succinct manner, reflected from our life and our experience, not something we read in a book. The opportunity to make all of this stuff in the book, your life, is right there in front of you, but you have to be the one to do it. All right? It refers to the principle that the Lotus Sutra is a teaching of Shakabuku, not Shoju, because there's no mercy in Shoju. That's just putting it off to another lifetime rather than making it manifest and change in this one. This is the only lifetime that actually exists, because you're not in, and nothing, you can't remember beginningless time or, pardon me, non-substantiality. You can't remember Ku. You don't remember Ku, okay? And you may remember entering your childhood, even your oldest memories, but you don't remember what preceded that. And you don't know what's going to come after, okay? But it's happened over and over and over again. Why can't you remember it? Because it has no function in the real world, all right? So the refutation, so he says, this refers to the principle of Lotus Sutra is the teaching of Shakabuku, the refutation of the provisional doctrines, which is what I'm constantly doing. This is what Nichiren and his followers are doing now when they chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. We're refuting errors in understanding. And I'm sorry that my glasses keep sliding a little bit on my shiny nose. This sutra, point 6, regarding the passage, this sutra provides good medicine for the ills of the people of Jampadvipa. If a person who has an illness is able to hear this sutra, then his illness will be wiped out and he will know neither old age nor death. Now, some of you have experienced illness or are experiencing illness, and you're chanting Daimoku quite considerably, and it doesn't seem like anything got wiped out. What got wiped out is the karma that created that in this lifetime. Okay? That's the thing that you should be understanding. He goes on to explain that then. Volume 10 of Words and Phrases says one should meditate on and give full understanding to this passage. So don't take it in the literal sense of what it says. Will know neither old age nor death. Well, I guarantee you I'm going to die, and I'm guaranteeing you I've experienced old age. All right? They're real, and they hit everybody. It's a part of the four sufferings that we're all born into. All right? So I've meditated on and given myself full understanding of this passage, and now I'm going to do my best to share with you whatever that is, as small as it might be. The record of the orally transmitted teaching that Shonin is saying, The word a person here, okay, include everyone from those on the highest level who have attained the fruits of Buddhahood down to those on the lowest, the offenders in hell. Okay, so that was everybody. Illness refers to the three poisons of greed, anger, and foolishness, because what we've done is we've flipped greed, anger, and foolishness, the three poisons, into the Dharma body, wisdom, and emancipation. Now, what's emancipation? Is freedom. You know, we're limitless. We're Buddhas of limitless joy, right? That's freedom. That's complete freedom from delusion. We understand the truth about life and death. We understand the truth about the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That is absolute freedom. And how did we do it? We flipped greed, anger, and foolishness and made it Dharma body, emancipation. Pardon me. Dharma body, wisdom, and emancipation. The wisdom of the Buddha and the freedom that provides us from suffering, because we understand the phenomenal realm exactly as it exists, and we understand the parameters of Ganken Ogo and deliberately creating the appropriate karma. We're not in question about our lives from the past having value, and that we're experiencing what we're experiencing now out of great pity and compassion as Buddhists, exactly as we are. He says, illness refers to the three poisons of greed, anger, and foolishness, fundamental earthly desires possessed even by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Okay, so there was no escaping this need to flip the greed, anger, and foolishness into Dharma body, wisdom, and emancipation, because that was the only way to manifest Buddhahood in our present form, and the only way to demonstrate that it's doable, so that somebody else could be encouraged and decide to go on the path that we already have. All right? Neither old age refers to Shakyamuni Buddha, and nor death refers to the Bodhisattvas who emerged from the earth and their followers, because we don't ever die. We keep coming back. We keep expressing the truth of the middle way. The passage is preached for the sake of living beings in the present age, after the Buddha has passed away, when the truth has become obscured and lost. That's why we're born in the fifth 500-year period in the Saha world, the age of quarrels and disputes. Accordingly, the word illness in such a case refers to the slandering of the law, because if you walk away, that is slander, and it's very clearly qualified. You must endure. You must have dutta. You must not give up to the last moment of your life. You keep progressing, and don't think that it's a waste because I'm going to die anyway. That's stupidity, or not stupidity. That's ignorance. That's delusion. All right? So, illness in such cases refers to slandering the law. Hence, those who accept and uphold this sutra, which is not giving up until the very end of their last moment of your life and progressing in each one of them, uphold this, will without doubt find their illness wiped out at once. The illness of the delusion of greed, anger, and foolishness that keeps you from being the Buddha of the Dharma realm and wisdom and emancipation. Now, Nichiren and his followers who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo are just such persons. And from that point, it took me a long time to just get through 4 points, but we're now into chapter 24, the Bodhisattva Wonderful Sound, 3 important points on page 176. We'll hit that the next time we get together. Thank you.